Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. Looking a bit thin on top there, sir, and I've got no rhythm. I'm still doing catch-up of all the books that I read over the last quarter of 2023, and this is an interesting one because it's kind of changed a little bit about my reading. I think I've always been a book monogamist. I start a book, I read from beginning to the end, I finish that book, and then I go and read something else. And I've adopted a slightly different approach for this book, and then I'm going to carry that forward, and I'll just explain why. Okay, so this was part of a massive recommendation that Diva Steve Donoghue made, where someone challenged him to list 100 great works of non-fiction, and he cheekily did, and he listed 100 great works of non-fiction, all by women. It's a fantastic video. If I remember, I will link it below because it's just awash with great recommendations. And one of the ones that jumped out at me was this book, The Beginnings of Desire, Reflections on Genesis by Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg. I said that right? Yeah. And a book, as he described it and pitched it, as a book writing about Genesis, the book of Genesis, the first of the 5 books of the Torah, the Pentateuch, whatever you want to call it. Now, a little bit about my background. I'm a practicing Jew. I spent some time, not practicing, I haven't got very good at it yet. I did spend some time before university, after high school, in a religious seminary here in Israel, and then went back to London to do my degree in literature. Now, what I should have been spending that time, the whole purpose was to immerse myself in Jewish philosophy, in the Talmud, in all sorts of religious learning. I spent a fair bit of it in bed, reading the works of, I think I read a lot of Thomas Hardy that year, Jane Austen I got back into, and then other bits and pieces that I found, whatever I could find cheap. I think I started with John Updike that year. Anyway, that is to say that I have some grounding in Torah studies, but not a lot, and didn't do very much of it. On the other hand, all the way growing up, the stories of the Bible, and specifically the first part of the Bible, which is where a lot of the good stories really happen. Like later on, there's just some laws about the priests and what they do. But certainly the book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus is a bit dry. But what comes after that, numbers in English, is things pick up again. But Genesis has got all the best stories. It's got Adam and Eve, that goes into Noah, that goes into Abraham, and all the way up to Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob, and then Joseph. All the great stories. If you've ever seen a Lloyd Webber musical, you may be familiar with that story. But these stories are very much part, as much as Goldilocks or Superman. There were stories of my childhood that we learned about. So that's I don't do a lot of reading about Jewish things anymore. I have prayer books and I have other books that I could refer to if I'm interested in knowing whether I can tear toilet paper on Shabbat or not. I may think, but I don't have, for example, I don't have in this house, in this apartment, a complete set of the Talmud, which many of my contemporaries would keep and have collected over the years, and I don't have that. And I don't regularly study anything Jewish particularly. Anyway, Steve Donoghue recommended this. I thought, well, that's something I don't normally do, and it's got a sort of literary bent to it, because that is Zornberg's approach, and I thought I'd give it a try. Anyway, turns out it's a very dense read, quite hard for me. I must have started this, I think, end of October. So if you've watched the news, you may know that things are going on here. Just to give some clarity, 7th of October this year, or 7th of October 2023, was Simchat Torah. It was the last day, or the day after the festival of Sukkot. There's another festival, and it's called Simchat Torah, and that is the point in the year where we finish reading the Torah. So every year, every week, we read a different section of the Torah in synagogues around the world, and they're mostly in sync. That is, you go into a synagogue anywhere in the world, and they'll all be reading the exact same part of section, that weekly portion of the Torah. Sometimes gets out of sync, but it's too arcane to complex. Israel gets out of sync with the rest of the world, but then they can reconnect again. So mostly wherever you go in the world, you can walk into a synagogue on a Saturday morning and they will be reading the same portion. And Simchat Torah, which fell on the 7th of October, which is when the attack happened, is the point where we finish the entire thing, the 5 books, and immediately start again from in the beginning, God created Genesis, the very first portion in Genesis. So I started this about 3 or 4 weeks after that and found it a really dense read. So I was struggling with it. It's very brilliant. A lot of it goes over my head. The references obviously to the stories in the Bible, but she picks one specific part of each portion and dives into that, and then goes into deep philosophical references, references different parts of the Talmud, different parts of biblical commentary. Also will throw in literary references, so they'll suddenly throw in a bit of Wordsworth or some part of Shakespeare. And I say a very, very brilliant scholar, and probably a little too highbrow for me, maybe because I haven't done this kind of reading for a while, but also I may not just be bright enough. So what I decided, it took me, each page was taking me a while to go through, and it wasn't really going in. And I said, you know what? Instead of just reading the whole thing like I would normally do, from cover to cover, this is broken up into chapters, each chapter corresponding to the weekly Torah portion. So I said, I will catch up to where we are right now, and then I will read each portion on the week that we read it. So it gave me a way to stick a pin in this and put a bookmark in it and say, okay, I'm now up to date, and next week I'll read the next 30 pages, and then next Saturday morning I'll read the next 30 pages, with, and in sync with as everyone around the world is studying this. So I made it through this. This would have been finished last week. We finished the book of Genesis, and today I'm recording this on Friday. So tomorrow's Saturday, or this week we've been previewing it, and then tomorrow we'll read the whole of the first book of Exodus, the first portion of the book of Exodus. So I finished this just in time, and decided that I was enjoying this thing where I've got a novel on the go, or a thriller, or whatever it is, or a comic book, but on Shabbat I will take time out and read 30 pages of something else. So no longer book a monogamist, but I've got a little something on the side which I come back to every week. So finish this. She has a book on Exodus, but I didn't see much point in me pursuing that further. I don't think she's got further than Exodus. I didn't see any point in doing that because I really struggled to make head or tail of this. I think I understood just enough to know it was brilliant. So what I did when I was in London was I picked up the next 2 books. So I've got Exodus and I've got Leviticus, but in these editions, these are Jonathan Sacks's commentary, weekly commentary, the late chief rabbi of the UK and the Commonwealth, Baron Sacks. So just a little. So this is Covenant and Conversation, which I'll be starting tomorrow. A weekly reading of the Jewish Bible, and this is Exodus, the Book of Redemption, and then I also just picked up the one that comes after that, Leviticus, the Book of Holiness. There's Covenant and Conversation, weekly readings by Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. So this will take me the next 2/5, the next 40% of the year. The next 2/5 of the year we'll get this, and then maybe I'll order Numbers and Deuteronomy from Amazon, see if they can deliver them to the UK. Or here if I find them here. A little bit about this. So Jonathan Sacks was the late Jonathan Sacks, Oliver Shalom, was chief rabbi of the UK. He became chief rabbi, I think, in around 1991. So while I was still living in the UK, I didn't know him. I have friends who knew him. I'm pretty sure I was in the same room as him on a couple of occasions. His son went to my school, was a couple of years below me, so I remember him. And I don't want to speak at it, I think his son is married to a cousin of mine. Anyway, I have good friends who were scholars and spent time with the late Rabbi Sacks in a number of different levels. One of my oldest friends is now Dean of the London School of Jewish Studies, where Rabbi Sacks had previously studied, and I think might have been Dean there as well. And he's a Sacks scholar. So, I'm peripherally aware of this man, a great philosopher, a great thinker, and by all accounts, a sort of very gentle human being, but a great thinker as well. So I just picked up this. I'm going to start this tomorrow, but I opened it to have a look, and the first thing that I saw was on the very first page, or the very second page, or the very third page, this is dedicated, you won't see that, to a man called Mark Weinberg, who I knew quite well. Mark was a few years, sadly, passed away very tragically young. But Mark was a couple of years below me, and I knew him quite well. The other thing about Mark was that we shared a birthday. So his mother had been a teacher of mine when I was like 5 years old, or a teacher in the school. She was terrifying. She still is, as far as I know. Mark was a gentle, beautiful, kind soul. But we have all, I'm sure, come across these people who are angels walking the earth, and Mark was a bit like that. He was just goodness. And we shared a birthday, so there was a few years where we would see each other every year on my birthday. It was because we'd be going out to a kosher restaurant to eat with my family, celebrating, and his family would be coming out having celebrated his birthday. And that was, of all the times we met, there was a thing where we always wished each other happy birthday, and our family sort of passed in the night. He's very much missed, and it was just a touching thing. As I brought this back and as I opened it up, I saw that it was actually dedicated to Mark, who had worked closely with Rabbi Sacks. Anyway, that's just a little bit, I don't know how I've managed to stretch this out for 11 minutes, but I will be reading this one portion per week until I get to the end of the book of Exodus, 12, 13 weeks hence, and then I've got Leviticus, and then hopefully I'll get more. But it's just something, I'm not, there has been an increase in people seeking out religion in time of crisis. I don't think this is necessarily unusual. I don't feel that that's what's motivating me particularly, but I just thought it was a nice little different way of managing my reading. So I'm still reading everything I'm reading, and then I pause on Saturday morning and read 30, 40 pages of one chapter of this. Okay, that's where we're at. Covenant and Conversation, a weekly reading of the Jewish Bible. I'll be starting this tomorrow, and I guess I'll let you know how it goes by the time I get to the end of it. This was prompted by The Beginnings of Desire, Reflections on Genesis, which was a fabulous recommendation from Steve Donoghue, but really I don't think I was up to it. Brilliant minds, and there are some brilliant minds out there among you, would probably get a lot more out of this than I did, but it's brilliantly written, deeply scholarly, and too smart for me. God bless, bye.